Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When Mr. McIntyre came up, he spoke about Don having taken, it seems, all his notes. I know we work electronically these days, and there are people in all of these agencies who are ready to share because it's a partnership. But it seems as if they both took all of mine. And therefore, I will try my very best not to keep going over the same ground. As usual, all protocols are observed in the interest of time. I can start by noting and agreeing that all parties have an interest in a successful project. And I think we need to start there every single time. What comes out, though, is that we, having identified some of the issues that are involved, and we spoke about many, we do not then take the next step of trying to put them right. I will tell you that a committee was established because the public sector and the public sector agencies accept responsibility for its part in some of the lack of achievement of the objectives of the projects in general. And so a committee was established, including the master builders, including the engineers, the architects, the NCC, the OCG, to seek to identify ways of ensuring that some of the issues that were raised can be addressed, and the public, who we all serve, receive value for money, because that is the primary objective of what we're doing. We started out having quarterly meetings, and as usual, we are always too busy to save time. We will seek to have those meetings back on track, put back on track. Don, in his presentation, started pretty much at the tender stage, which is where the contractors come in. But through this committee, we are trying to pull everybody to the start of the cycle, from the moment we conceptualize projects. So my presentation will look at the context, the public sector culture within which we operate, contract management versus contract administration, and just delve a little bit in the pre-award period, the decisions that are required, strategies used, and so on. I think Ray went into significant details as well in the tendering process and so on and so forth, and the contract and the various clauses. So I'll just try to skip over those areas. My experience, as was noted, is in the public sector. The only private sector experience I have is at my house trying to get some services and some goods. And, you know, I, too, ignore those things that I know. I know that you need to have a clear scope when the man comes in to do whatever work. But I said, you know, just do this. I know that I need to make proper payment arrangements, but it never, ever works. I know we need to be able to measure the thing when he's done and say, yes, you are finished. But we always end up not agreeing, not seeing eye to eye. And when I say, all right, do this too, the management of that change is not properly done. And of course, the only dispute resolution we have is probably the machete or cuss out and thing, right? Which is why, and the police will tell you, that we end up having the levels of murders and all of those things in the country, because we can't seem to find a way to properly, in an organized way, resolve our dispute. But I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, because that's a total presentation. At the National Housing Trust, we manage a wide range of contracts. Goods from a little tape to a trencher. Services from getting a little laborer to getting a lawyer. Works from buying a little door to doing a whole development. But my focus now is going to be on construction works, because that is where the IMAJ is at. And since I'm a guest of theirs, I will keep within that area. We operate at the National Housing Trust in a project management environment. So we try to organize all of those pre-award things. We try to ensure that those post-award activities, and maybe Mr. McIntyre can tell you some of the problems, discussions, and done as well, that we get into sometimes, seeking to have all of the areas addressed in a reasonable and rational way. It's not always easy. So, the major concerns of the people of the country is really value for money and proper project governance, compliance with all the terms and conditions, and of course minimizing all of those overruns and so on, which sometimes end up not giving you the value for money that we seek after. In the public sector, we have a whole lot of legislation, and I want to tell you that people are nervous about every single decision that is made, because there is some act that may get you. I see my friends from the OCG here. Public Procurement Act, which is being revised as we speak. Public Bodies Management and Accountability Act. Contractors General Act. Financial Administration and Audit Act. All of these are supposed to be guiding the behavior, the actions of the officers within the public sector. And of course, you have the oversight bodies who ensure that these rules are followed. Talk about the Auditor General. And sometimes we are dragged before Parliament to answer all manners of questions. No, there is a culture that exists. And I can tell you that based on all of what I just spoke about, that culture is changing. And we talk about acting in good faith. That means you sit down there and you know that this is how the thing ought to go. That contractor, you must submit your report by X time. But you don't come and we just say, well, and we send it the next time. The decision-making bureaucracy is heavy, which then cause your start date, usually, to be at variance and a stranger to your base date of your contract. So you start asking for trouble before you sign that contract. Then the employees, and even when you get into the matter of disputes, employees tend not to be owners. It's not fimiting. I mean, when it's my thing, let me tell you something. I'm going to fight tooth and nail for every single inch that you get. But it's a people thing, So it is not the same to make sure that the outcome is achieving the value for money that we seek. And we tend not to be affected by the outcome. We talk about accountability. Even for the contractors, we've been talking about performance standards and measures and so on. It's not yet in place. So the contractor can perform poorly, having put in a price at which he can't do the work, and then he'll get the next contract by doing the same thing. So these are matters that we need to address. The contracts themselves, the conditions of contracts and so on, in the past, were matters for the technical people. Them, I don't deal with that. No, not about that. But slowly, and certainly at the National Housing Trust, all of these are now legal documents and are treated as such. They are properly gone through to ensure that if you put something in your particular conditions of contract, it is because you want it there, not because I never know to write the thing properly and so on. And of course, the culture of informality, that we tend not to write. We like to talk. I talk to you, I say, we agree, So, but then where is it in writing? I had a sign up in my office. I took it down some time ago. That if it isn't written, it is not said. Right? So make sure you put it in writing. We are always in a hurry to implement things in the public sector. As much as the bureaucracy keeps it from happening. Don talks about 3 weeks to prepare your tender, even for complicated projects. But we're in a hurry sometimes because the money will have to be spent within a certain timeline. Or there are other imperatives. We know some of them. The economic issues are real. That we are really trying to squeeze out every single bit of value for money. Right? We're in housing. And let me tell you, a significant portion of the people cannot, if you just calculate the cost of blocks to put them one on top of each other, to make a room, a significant number of people cannot afford it. And therefore, we're always struggling to get the best price possible for those people. The fact that we have to tender for all services will cause a little bit of, let me say, constraint on our part. Because while we accept that there are some professionals, nobody here of course, who are absolutely and extremely difficult. And some contractors will tell me that if John upon the project, me not going to tender. Right? Say true. But I can't say I want Mary to do the project after tender. And if John wins, well, you have John. So we start out as clients knowing that we're going to have some problems here. Yes. Right? We are still trying to find a way to address that. Maybe I need to speak with the NCC and the OCG. But it is more than just about the contractor. The contract life cycle definition, one definition, is that the process of systematically and efficiently managing contract creation, execution, and analysis for maximum operational and financial performance and minimizing risk. Now that's it. That is what the client is about. That is what the client wants. And I'm sure everybody else. Now there are two distinct periods, upstream or pre-award, and downstream or post-award. A lot has been said about the post-award period. But when we look at contract management, for us, it begins from the moment you are conceptualizing the case for this project. It takes you through the development of that case. What are your needs? How do you define them? How do you design comprehensively? The contract formulation, which is your tender, what form of contract, and so on and so forth, and your tender process. Contract administration, how do you ensure that the contractor and the client perform what it is that they have promised? And of course, most importantly, I just spoke about it, the relationship management. So when you know that this consultant will have major issues with this contractor, there is somebody who will need to jump in quickly and ensure that that relationship is properly managed. And of course, the review of the performance under the contract at the end of the day. I don't think we do enough of that. Contract administration begins and ends with good contract management, especially in what I talk about, the foundation stages. When we are in the business, if you put in good foundation, chances are your house will be fine. So the issue of, as Don says, faulty contract management may be so, but that's just a part of it. And I think Ray went into it. If the design isn't properly done, if you do not understand what is it that you want in your construction contract and properly identify the various elements, chances are even a good administrator will find problems. So the pre-award stage, the idea, or as the NHT, the mission to build houses. So you know what we are into. Get a project manager on spot. Of course, the management of your contract has started. The project management plan, the needs elaboration, what you want, to make sure that that is properly identified. What are your critical success factors, your risk? Do you want to be the designer? You want to get a designer to do it for you, or do you want the design build, as we are also going into that area more and more? As a contractor, you take it on your risk and determine how you achieve my performance specs. The employer designs, what role will you give to this engineer versus this administrator? We have found that in a lot of instances, we have excellent design engineers. Well, let me tell you something. They are absolute strangers to the conditions of contracts that we use. And it's just a reality. And also the flip side also works. We have some excellent administrators who can't design a thing if it were to save their life. But so we are trying to manage these things from the client perspectives all the time. So who leads your team? Who are the members of your team? And you have all the list of people who you ought to consider to be on the team. The team requirements, the significance of the team leader. That team leader must establish a certain environment for all the members to be able to play their part. It is critical that they work together and not work as individuals. We have had so much of that, you'd be amazed. So we have gone through, all right, we used to procure each of those members individually and then put them together. Of course, we now know that in more than 50% of the cases, we are going to have problems. So we say, you put your team together, and we still have some issues. Boy, the man not pay me, you know those Jamaican issues. We have them right here. The knowledge and experience and the appropriate level of authority of each of the team members is important, because sometimes the leader also run roughshod over the team members, and that sometimes creates problems. Make sure that the level of skill is the level that you want. Don't just put people on your team. Like for a lawyer, you want a construction lawyer, not just any person who has been trained in law. So the team assembly, size and complexity of the project, that should be part of what is considered. The role and responsibilities of each member. Communication, we keep hammering about that. Communication. And this goes for every aspect of life, much less something as important as a contract. The communication between the team members, among all of the people, including the contractor, the client, everybody. The communication and the protocols are extremely important. And of course, we go into design elaboration, which Ray had dealt with significantly. Contract formation, Ray went into this, so I'll skip over most of it. You must follow the GOJ procurement guidelines, part of contract management strategy, trying to manage the employer's responsibility, which is part of what a good administrator will do. Manage the employer's responsibilities. Because even if you are not the designer, or you are the designer, which we find sometimes, you need to understand. Ray talks about the engineer having, or the administrator being held liable for their decision. But in Jamaica, it hardly happens. So the engineer will not respond to queries in time. And everything, remember, time in a contract is of the essence. And it is, at the end of the day, the client and the people who will have to pay. So during the contract management strategy development, you consider the value of the works overall, the type of specs you are going to use, performance or conformance, the complexity of the project, which then would feed into the time you give the contractor to prepare his or her bid, the time scale when you want the project, phasing of the project, the form of relationship, how you're going to measure it, all of those things. Whether it is going to be a partnership or whatever. And also, importantly, the likely tenderers. Who do you expect to tender? Because you have to identify those risks and plan for them. We talk about desired outcome, value for money, everybody meeting their obligations, that there are no disputes. If you get to that stage, to God be the glory. That there are no surprises. Yeah, like, say, boy, you never know, say, so you do this, If it is not, and this is on both parts, both the contractor's part and on the administrator's part. There are things that they talk about advising as soon as you become aware or ought to have become aware. And these are important things because they expect good faith in the management of contracts. So you don't say, boy, I know, so this is going to happen to him, As happens in tenders, by the way. Contractor go and say, I know that this quantity wrong, So watch me and them. And we talk about unbalanced tenders. Put in a big number for that. And a little number someplace else, And so when you come to measurement, then it comes up and bites you. The conditions of contract, part of the tender document, sets the rules, governs rights and obligations, risk transfer, what is employer risk, what is contractor risk, includes the general conditions, the particular conditions, the employer's obligations. Of course, we, in preparing the document, ought to ensure that there's no ambiguity, that you disclose everything you know. So if I did a soil report, and the soil report, for example, sometimes you do a little borehole, and it may differ from the soils report that was done later on. It is important to give the contractors, during the tender process, all of this information, so it can be taken into account as they evaluate their bids. And of course, that you should have an experienced lawyer construction lawyer dealing with their conditions. Forms of contract, Ray went into that. The various standards prepared by the Ministry of Finance, the funding agency standards, JCC, FIDIC. FIDIC is what we use. So we don't get into trying to develop standards of our own or to use untested standards. We go directly to FIDIC. And in particular, the Red Book. Employer design, 99% of the time at the moment. The Yellow Book is in the wings waiting. We're going contractor design. And the shortfall, of course, we talk about extensive case law and written guidelines all over the place, so you should not have a problem interpreting the various clauses. The basic principles design primarily undertaken by the employer. Works are to be remeasured in accordance, and this is important, in accordance with the contract documents, not remeasured generally. It's in accordance with what it is that you were contracted to do. The employer appoints the engineer to administer, and the engineer, of course, is a name. It could be Ray, the architect, on behalf of the client. And engineer has power. This is part of to vary the works, but of course we do a little modification in the particular application because there is a variation policy of government, and that has to be included in your contract. And of course the DAB has the power to resolve any dispute and change the determination of the engineer, who of course is my agent. Of course, the engineer must be named, and the contract, and this is important because a lot of times the engineer's contract is not compatible with the assigned duties and responsibilities under the contract. So it is important that you, from the very outset, understand where you want to go so that these things can be incorporated in the engineer's contract. So limitations and so on should be identified. And the limits on authorization and the authority of the engineer must be in the particular conditions of contract. And Ray spoke about this. The administrator must know the contract. And know here means be extremely familiar with the contract. So, fundamental issues at tender, the complete design. Now, I believe about 90% of what Don spoke about a while ago can be placed right here because we suffer from this particular issue. Complete design. The scope is clear, the specification is detailed. It limits problems later on. Again, the conditions of contract must be comprehensive, unambiguous, identify all the rights and obligations. All this information that you have disclosed, a proper payment structure, proper method of measurement, change management properly identified, and how you resolve dispute. Now, Don spoke about this thing called a reasonable price, because that's one of the other reasons why there are all of these problems. And I just want to tell you, I'm also a commissioner of the NCC. And we struggle as well because you go through the process of registering contractors, right? And in doing that, we say these are people competent and experienced in this particular thing. So, if it is that you send out complete designs where the scope is clear, the detailed specs are clear, where the conditions of contract, which I presume they've read, is comprehensive and unambiguous. All the relevant information that you have has been disclosed. What is the point at which the work cannot be done for a price that the contractor says he can do it? What is that point? And that is a major problem. Where are you going to say, I am going to prevent the people of the country from getting value for the buck that we're about to spend? And that is where a huge part of the challenge is. Of course, in the handbook, we try to identify that place by talking about plus or minus 15% of the pre-tender estimate. But let me tell you something. Sometimes I have, on behalf of the National Housing Trust, to go in front of the Infrastructure Committee of Parliament, and I see that the chairman of that committee was here earlier. And I don't know how to defend this thing called a pre-tender estimate, because they're all over the place. No, it is not just that we want something for nothing, because there's a cost to everything. But having regard to the economic situation that we are in, we must seek after this thing called value. And I tell you, I hope we can find, working along with the partners, to get as close as possible to that place. The post-award period. As I said before, by this time the foundation is so well laid that a fairly good, not a good, a fairly good administrator will breeze through this contract like it's nothing. And that is the objective of the committee that I spoke about earlier, to get to the stage where everybody behaves in a way that when the project is completed, we can all be happy. And we don't have all of these things where we go all the various places, including to the Privy Council. The contract, we spoke about the documents, is an agreement between two parties. Again, the administrator is not a party to the contract and is making all the decisions. The engineer's duties and authority is in the contract and may be required to obtain the engineer's approval for the various issuing of variations, etc., etc. And of course, he's deemed to act with the employee's approval. So whatever he does, have to just take the responsibility, right? Because he's acting. If I didn't put a little thing saying, can't do this, if he does it, then it presupposes that I've given him the authority. The main thing in administration is, and we talk about it, we have a pre-construction meeting. We have meetings with the administrator. And because I have my book, Yeah, man, I walk with my book. Yes. And I say, listen, the thing is written down here, You don't have to guess it. Every action that you are required to take is written down. Who's supposed to do what? When the contractor ought to submit what? When the employer ought to do what? When the administrator himself or herself have to do what? It's identified. It's not rocket science. But let me tell you something. Pulling teeth is a walk in the park. Emancipation Park, that is. So, did they observe the rules from the get-go? The documents that are required, remember that time is of the essence, observe the deadlines, review and feedback, give them as is required. Appoint your DAB. Now, it is important that when you are appointing your DAB, you explore all potentials for conflict. Because you really and truly want for that to be the place at which all decisions are made. It is really not in anybody's interest for it to go anywhere else. Repeat, it is in the interest of the project and all concerned for all decisions, if they have to go anywhere, to end at the DAB. So you want to have somebody without conflict, somebody who is respected and has the experience. And if you do this, a lot of money can be saved and time. The rest of this is about the clauses that Ray would have gone through substantially. I won't delay our discussions any further in that regard. So I just want at this stage to stop and to thank you so much for listening. You seem to have listened keenly, and I thank you.
I want to draw particular attention and to acknowledge Jamaica National Building Society. Jamaica National came on board with us in 2014, or was it 2013? 2013? 2 years now. This is your third year. And I want to acknowledge in particular Ms. Tiffany Gordon, who is the executive mortgage sales. Am I correct? I'm glad that you came. You can see that the attendees are enjoying your seminar because you are our main sponsor. So we convene at 1:10, 1:15. So you have roughly about an hour and 10 minutes to chop and go. And I'm going to ask David to come forward now with the presentations very quickly so that we can get out of here somewhere around in about another 3 or 4 minutes, and then lunch will commence. David Garrell.
As a token of our appreciation, the Master Builders Association would like to give some handouts. Appreciation for you being here, firstly, and also our main sponsor would also like to express their gratitude and their appreciation for the presentations and contributions of the panel and the moderator. So I'm going to ask the executive of mortgage sales, Tiffany Gordon, to join me up top here, please.
Hi, good morning. How are you? I'm very happy to be here again to be participating as a sponsor for this event, which I hold very close to me just because of the relationship that Jamaica National has as a financial institution with these type of organizations, especially master builders, where you have your engineers, your architects, and all of that. We do realize that without you, we wouldn't have homes to finance. So we're very grateful for that. I'm also very grateful to the presenters who have presented very enlightening information about the industry and things to come. Thank you very much for that. And as a basis of my gratitude, I would like to present you with a small token on behalf of Jamaica National. So, Mr. President, Mr. President first, can you please approach Mr. Carville Stewart?
You okay?
Thank you. My second gift is to Mr. Donald Mullings. Oh, the presentation. It's funny. My third gift is to Mr. Raymond McIntyre. Uncle. I'm fine. My fourth gift is to Mr. Donald Moore. Sweet. Him smell good, do you see? And my last gift is for Mr. Dean Burrows. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy. Take care. I thank you and have a beautiful day.